Welcome. Thank you for coming out on a Saturday. We're really excited. We're joined by, well, first off, I'm Manuel Aragon from Lighthouse. I'm the community engagement manager. And as somebody mentioned, this is the wonderful Lighthouse building right behind me. Ideally, we would be doing this in person, but we have the next best thing, which is Zoom. And so we're glad to come together. We're joined tonight, this is really exciting. We're joined by Martha Kalin, Erika Walker, Lia Woodall, Connie Zumpf, all have been really closely affiliated with Lighthouse. And we're just really lucky and excited to celebrate you and your works tonight. And so our first reader is going to be Martha Kalin. Martha's poetry has appeared in Anastamos, Don't Just Sit There, Inklette, Panoply, San Pedro River Review, the anthology Obsession, Sestinas in the 21st Century, published by University Press of New England, and will be appearing in the forthcoming anthology Wild Gods, the Ecstatic and Contemporary Poetry and Prose from New Rivers Press. She's won a Hopwood Award from University of Michigan, American Poets Honorary Prize from Brandeis University, and has received several fellowships from Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. Her chapbook, Afterlife and Mango, was published by Green Fuse Poetic Arts in 2013. Her poetry collection, How to Hold a Flying River, won the 2019 Terry J. Cox Poetry Award and was recently released from Regal House Publishing. Martha?
Thank you, Manuel. Wow, that was long. Yeah, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you all for coming to listen to us. Thanks to my fellow readers, and most especially thanks to Lighthouse for hosting us. This book wouldn't have come into being without Lighthouse. So I'm just so grateful that the book, as Daniel said, came out in August from Regal House Publishing. And it actually was inspired and begun during the poetry book project that was part of Lighthouse. So I really feel like I owe a lot to Lighthouse for this book existing at all, and to the community of all of you that touched it in many ways. So thank you. And I'm just going to read a sampling of poems, starting with a poem called Confluence. A line of moons, swans out of water, a family posed at the scenic overlook. On fire, sulky. The father's lips form a circle, his head tilted up, singing. Inside are invisible things. Family is an ocean that will swallow you. The last time driving together through West Virginia, scent of road dust and Alzheimer's, my father spoke of his regrets, and the dark waters parted. Oh, to be water of life, aged in oak barrels 3 to 100 years. Aromas vary with age, vanilla, nuts, flowers, slight swirl, come closer, inhale. Trebbiano, delicate, well-rounded, born of chalky soil and ocean. Meanwhile, there's this. The next poem is for my mom, who was hoping to be here tonight. I don't know if she's made it on, but she's a big part of my writing life as well as all of my life. So this poem is dedicated to her, and it's called Consolation, number 3, Lento Placido in D flat major, after Franz Liszt. I go back and forth on retirement. Yes, there will be time for walking when the air's still cool. No, I won't use my time well. When the shower curtain billows as if someone entered the house and a homeless man asks me for 50 cents, I say no. But when my wallet's stolen by some maestro of lost identity along with dental floss and the keys to my house, the yes-no balance begins to shift. It's time to go. I leave for Florida the next day to see my mom. We walk on the beach in blustery winds, looking for shells. Most things I worry about come to nothing, and the future surprises me. Now, coming out the other side of the worry tunnel, I remember the outline of my grandparents' home on Linden Street, a form of consolation. Clouds float by as if on piano keys, as if morning would always love evening, silhouettes changed by what the other is. I come back to our feet in sand, the buoyancy of the kite surfer, our passage into a certain, uncertain future. Present, as I sit with my mother on the boardwalk looking at silver memorial plaques of family members who once watched the sunset too. Will you make one for me? It wakes my eye, a bubble of air inside water, iridescent scalloping of a shell. The next poem is called Between Your Sleep and Mine, and it starts with an epigraph by Herman Melville from Moby Dick. And he's one of my very favorite writers. And it reads, hark ye yet again the little lower layer. If man must strike, strike through the mask. How can the prisoner reach outside except by thrusting through the wall? 6 years after your cancer, you live in a different time. The thud of apples as they drop on the roof in the night signals a shift, a gathering of seeds. Each singly pressed burst of tree released down the shingled slope to land at your door. Light lasts longer, bronzes fields where roots once sheltered slave blood. The past is just a skin you don't hold on to. A beautiful woman rescues your severed fingers and puts them on ice. Slow melting summer, making love on 100-count threads of spun cotton. Come in, I say, and in your dream, a blonde woman walks right through the wall into the room. Rows of cotton pickers move in rounded waves. You learned your lesson. Never let anyone see you give a white girl a gift. You give me flowers, first a peony picked from the shade of the apple tree, barely open, pale, but then it starts to bloom and just goes on, a blonde who makes herself at home. Get out of here, you scream, and I'm not certain who you're talking to. Then one red rose in a slender vase, then 3, then 18 tiny buds. Everything I have is steeped in privilege, waking early and returning to sleep as if there will always be more. The cooing dove on my balcony reminds me of Melville's little lower layer. The white wall that helps me sleep keeps you, your reassembled black fingers awake. And the next poem is called Myrtle Along the Steps. The patient's legs and arms are carved with scars, etched with tries she's made to die. She curls into my own wounds on the exam table, eyes filled with mud. Please let me out. Blue glass bottles in every window thick, leaded. My friend wonders how I deal with the larger issues, inequity, injustice. There are infinities I want to feel, but not always the one in front of me. The myrtle along the steps has shiny leaves and white star-like flowers. The patient dies over and over. What if we could see the maze from a great distance, darkness mingling easily with light, see the way out as we go in? Is this too much? To inhale pain as if it were the ever-lingering fragrance of a dark buried shrub. One for my daughter here, who I think is on tonight, so this is for you, Sarah. Where the River Goes. Years ago, when my daughter loved nothing better than Winnie the Pooh, Saturdays were days to fill ourselves with a story read over and over under layers of blankets piled on wide wooden floors. We'd pry ourselves out from turning pages and go to the nature center, spring across plank bridges to play the floating stick game. We'd tip our heads over the railing, laughing as our sticks, so unlike swans, would tumble, twirl, or hit a log jam caught in leaves. 2 ponds, 4 bridges, a story that didn't tell us where the river goes. And I'll just finish up with the title poem for the collection called How to Hold a Flying River. We keep forgetting the receding of hairlines. We do this together. Unknowable owls, feathered branches, leftover leaf light penetrates the dense valley floor. Beds springing from walls stir juices, so old we keep forgetting. The room has no ceiling. Oh, heaven, rest your head on my knees. This is how to hold a flying river. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you. I'll turn it over to whoever gets to be next.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martha. It was wonderful reading.
Thank you.
And Martha's, the link to Martha's book is in the chat. So you can find that at Regal House Publishing. So our next reader, and let me spotlight our next reader. So our next reader is Erika D. Walker. Erika's writing has been published in Literary Mama, Pulse, Voices from the Heart of Medicine, Bird's Thumb, The Human Torch, Journal of Poetry, Prose and Visual Art, and Medical Literary Messenger. She co-authored Denver Mountain Park's 100 Years of the Magnificent Dream, which won a Colorado Book Award, and is the author of Go Outside, a children's picture book. Her chapbook, Caught in the Light, is forthcoming from Finishing Line Press in November 2020. She is a graduate of the Poetry Book Project at Lighthouse Writers Workshop. Erika?
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight, and special thanks to you, Manuel, for setting up this event, and thanks to the Lighthouse for giving us all this opportunity to share our work tonight. I'm going to be reading from my chapbook, Caught in the Light, which will be released in November. These poems are about my experience a few years ago during the time when my father became ill and passed away, and then afterwards as I was healing. Interspersed with poems about my father are poems about nature, because I spent a lot of time in nature as part of my healing process. I'm going to start with the first poem in the book, which is about a conversation I had with one of my college professors many years ago. This poem sets the stage for my book and also for the journey that my book describes. I wish I had asked her more. Professor Marion wafts down the cool corridors of her island home, jungle print caftan billows behind. 2 white Pekingese, like worried courtiers anxious to please, puff and scuttle in her wake. Once her student, now her friend, I swim in her pool, read from her library, walk the beach at Lido Key. Every day at 6 p.m., she presides over happy hour, serves peanuts in small white bowls on a red lacquered tray. You spend the first half of your life acquiring things, she says, sipping her drink, sea breeze warm on her patio. A spouse, children, your profession, friends. Then you spend the second half losing them. I wish I'd asked her more, how you lose them, and especially how you survive. But like the coquinas on the beach, the conversation opened and closed before I realized it. Loss seemed unimaginable on that day, gin and tonic in hand, the perfume of hibiscus over everything. My mother passed away in 1985, and my father continued to live alone in our family home in Denver after she died. During this time, I was living in Minneapolis with my own family, and when I came home for Christmas in 2004, I realized that everything had changed. Worse things. In winter, just after Christmas, Father's cough did not stop. His cough kept coming, a cough like drowning, like boulders breaking, crashing at the edge of the sea. He stayed in bed for days, refused to eat. Doctor said he wasn't too bad, sent him home again. At night, Father rode the cough, and we both tried to sleep. I told myself it was an ordinary day, planned my sister's birthday party, drove to the grocery store. Alone in the kitchen, I sucked long breaths as if to breathe for him. I told myself the medicines were working, that Father would be okay. I started the soup, skinned the chicken, plunged pink flesh into boiling water. Down the hall, he foamed and sputtered. Dad, I shook his arm. Dad, I raised my voice. You are sleeping too much. We are going back to the ER. He did not open his eyes, did not move. There are worse things, he said, than sleeping too much. Needless to say, this was a difficult time. It was very hard to see him ill and suffering, and this next poem speaks to that. I ran away from Father's strangled cough, the crumpled bed, his dark room, away from the gray face I wanted to forget. I ran to the prairie where distant mountains do not end, forever and ever. Amen. A bitter winter wind laid down the brown grasses. Old snow settled in shadows beside the empty lake, a fractured map I could not read. Feet pounded my prayer on frozen ground. Don't let him die, don't let him die. From the top of the cottonwood, a blue heron rose on the wild wind. Great wings sliced the sky, lifted past the tangled branch. As I said, I often turn to nature for comfort during this time, and this is the focus of the next 2 poems. Biography, Colorado. I walk great-grandfather's land, the claim he staked on the mountainside, home place of elk, grizzly bear, mountain lion. Who was this man who brought his bride west, raised 6 children among columbine and ponderosa, his axe marks still on the cabin's logs? My hand maps the tall grass where their garden grew. I study the sky from the hollow where the root cellar caved in. Here is a place where wind begins a long way away, like something you can't quite remember. Here is a place where aspen trace deep water, and the scree, scree of the hawk stops your blood. Here is a place where dark means dark, and the Milky Way still broods over the land. Caught in the light. First morning out of bed, fever finally spent, I seek sun's warmth, the sweet smell of new grass. But days of wild rain bind this cold slate June. I move slow, hunched against the damp, feet wet in ragged puddles. Still wings, wide as my hand, dense with a calligrapher's scrawl, stop my steps. Near the porch, in a place I'd seen, but never really seen, 5 dragonflies hide beneath the sand cherry's purple leaves. Their long, drawn bodies, brilliant blue, carry the forgotten sky. I stand motionless, caught in the cathedral light of silent wings. This next poem is about the moment that I realized my father was dying, which is something that I hadn't allowed myself to know before this. Top of the hill. It is as if you were at the top of a hill, the doctor says. My father listens from his hospital bed. A plastic tube feeds him breath he can no longer take for himself. Each time you get sick, the doctor says, you roll a little farther down the hill. His young face shines above his white coat. I remember rolling down green hills when I was young, playing in the park where my father played as a child. I laughed, loved the bump and thrill, the smell of summer grass. I raced my brother to the top so we could fall again. We can catch you, the doctor says, and looks away, but we can never get you back to the top of the hill. I see my father roll now, gather speed, the ties of his hospital gown flailing like small hands. The doctor and I reach to catch him. Grass stains the doctor's coat. My fingernails fill with mud. My father closes his eyes. If he remembers hills, he does not say. This next poem was inspired by something that happened at my father's house shortly after he passed away. It's called To the Foxes. I just came to warn you, the neighbor said. Foxes have moved in since your father's been gone. We've seen 2 prancing down the street. Kittens and small dogs have disappeared. At night, they return to your father's backyard. Look, look, there in that hole. She spins me around, points to the bushes. I'm afraid, she says, her voice low. My poodle is afraid. He doesn't want to go outside. Make sure you leave no windows open. Foxes will invade your home. I check the cedar hedge, search the vinca, part the tangled Virginia creeper curtain. Nothing moves, no glittering eyes, no sharp teeth. 50 years ago, the prairie was my backyard. Lured by the meadowlark and the wild blue sky, I played pioneer, safe in the smell of sage. Cottonwoods long gone, strip malls and suburbia have silenced the prairie. I too am afraid. To the foxes, I say, go ahead, eat a few poodles. That's the least we can offer you. So I have two poems left. This first one is about how hard it is to adjust to the loss of someone we love. It's called Afterwards. I walk through the door, set my suitcase down in the quiet house, mail piled and sliding off the kitchen table. I start to call you, Father, to tell you we'd made it home. Our flight was fine, smooth sailing all the way. I was going to tell you that the pilot, somewhere over Iowa, announced a boy's turtle was missing, and how we laughed in the back with a flight attendant. And then I remember. So I have one last poem to read, but before I do, I just want to thank you all again for coming, and thanks very much to the Lighthouse for giving us this opportunity to share our work. This poem is called As If. 3 terracotta pots squat on the back steps. Geraniums bloom and bloom, as if it is still summer, as if frost isn't coming, as if wind will not rip leaves from all the trees. White birch flickers under the cobalt sky. Shadows play on the still green grass. Peach tree leaves hang like crescent moons in the October sky. Old ginger cat basks in the warm sun, eyes closed, paws at rest, as if all this will last forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Erika. I see the claps in the windows and a few snaps. Thank you. Our next reader, we'll spotlight. Our next reader is Leah Woodall. Leah is an award-winning essayist who experiments with form to explore her experience of twin loss to suicide and the roles played in her family of origin. Her hybrid chapbook, Removed to Play, was the 2019 Cupboard Pamphlet Contest winner. She has words published or forthcoming in the Best American Experimental Writing 2020, Under the Gumtree, Literal Latte, Sonora Review, Crack the Spine, The Rumpus, and Stout Loop Review. Leah began her writing journey at Lighthouse Writers Workshop and was an inaugural member of the book project. She's at work on a collection across genre called Leaving Twinbrook, a memoir on duality. Leah?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I don't know why I'm a little nervous. Usually I'm not, but I am today. Some of you sent me sweet notes, and I am getting back to my email next week. I traveled last week. I do want to thank Lighthouse. What a journey to be with Lighthouse, and their next page is turning as we speak. And also the covered pamphlet, who did really a wonderful job with my book, and a fabulous small press people should check out. Co-readers, fantastic. And my son, who did help, did the PowerPoint so I could bring you kind of a more hybrid experimental experience with the excerpt of the chapbook that I'm going to be reading. And I guess you got the content warning. Suicide is mentioned. And I guess that's it. We'll share screen. I hope this all works. It's very experimental. All right, Removed to Play, an essay in pieces. That night, on the occasion of our 10th high school reunion, we were in our hotel room, getting ready for our entrance together, twins returning. I was wearing a sleeveless black dress, simple, trimmed with red studded leather belt around my waist, wide with 2 buckles. Even with the AC blasting, I could feel my mascara melting. I had gone into the bathroom one more time, dabbed at my eyes, removed the black smudge. You were decked in dark formal pants, pinstriped shirt and paisley bow tie, your hair a starless night, clipped and shaped, much shorter than the ponytail that followed you in high school. Those rascal blue eyes, You snuck up in the doorway, camera pointed. Had you watched me through your lens, determined the light and slant? When I turned to leave, you stole my image, seized our silent dialogue, exposed my irked expression before it vanished. A look you knew too well from me, judgment. I study the gray tones of the photo of us, search for answers. So much of life has no bright line, but the supplementary narrative of its dual perspectives feels hazy, still awash in chemicals waiting to emerge, as if the fixative had never been processed, abandoned like your lithium. Focused shades of story, a blur. What good are artists' hands that can't be stilled? I need to move. I need to play our photo, interact with its playfulness, unravel my own solemn judgment. I did not know its history when I became consumed, didn't know how monstrous its mixtures towards solution, nor the enormous peril, certain placements of pieces impossible to solve. Its debut in 1880, a frenetic craze, the new solitaire game in a box, 15 numbered tiles, an entire country's compulsion. Devotees lost their jobs or landed in asylums. Newspapers ran ads and poems scoffing all the adverse effects of owning one. Last row stuck on 13, 15, 14. Papers reported suicides. Little did I know when I began, turned our last photograph into a slide puzzle. We might be in pieces forever. My right eye divided among 4 squares. In 30 years, a fast-growing cataract blurs my vision, so much so that I must not drive at night, and the other eye is not far behind. In mid-December, a month from now, I have surgery. See again. Some things can be fixed or nixed. To manipulate the tiles, I must remove one. I choose the black tile, its dark proximity, clueless, unilluminating. I'm looking for direction, distinct patterns and shapes, skin and hair, scale and shade, a compass of body parts, a door towards solution. Did we ever speak of that photo? Discuss its composition? I can't recall. We talked a good deal about your work the few times we were in Arizona together. I pointed out my favorite prints and slides, listened to the stories you shared about each. I've been a fan of your black and white, the cemetery series of fresh child graves, fabric dolls left leaning at night against their markers, dark as it was. Your time traveling through Mexico transported me, the backlit silhouette sitting in a window, old man in a sun-cursed shack in a field of untamed grasses, his cowboy hat bowed and burdened. I stare at the squares, looking for a strategy. 2 of my 4 eyes already side by side, my hairline intact. A couple moves later, the bottom half of my face together meets my right shoulder. In 2012, that shoulder frozen. I can't move it without debilitating pain shooting down my arm, where my body most felt the loss of you, as you yanked it again and again across our death canal, insisting I follow. Before you died, when I smelled sadness in the air, felt it invade my body, I'd go to the movies, have popcorn. Coping strategies for a bad week. Suicide, an unthinkable remedy that I never thought of, but now I do. The legacy you left when you killed yourself. Diaphanous idea chiseled in reality, a permission slip signed and sealed. Late summer that year, 1990, you called, told me how she wasn't ready for a baby, how you would defer, hers to decide. I didn't know her, but I told you, if she wants to talk, I'm a good listener. I can offer some support. Little had I heard your lament. Little had I understood your deep cavern, breeding darkness. That summer, I nursed my second child, a boy this time. Learned his language, coos and cries, You nursed your soul, weighted down with old voices, ingrained moral code, resurrected in a troubled mind. Little had I paid attention when I brought my babies home that last Thanksgiving. You shot rolls of film of them, but had you held my son, wondered what your own might have been. Peekaboo, there you are, front and center, silly mirror. I can still feel your heartbeat, gentle press on the button, binding click of the shutter, blinding flash at the subject, resolute trigger. My head is exploding, bisected by the micro frame, faceless like a dolly moment, me morphing into the damaged me, all blood and brain matter leaking from my head, your bolt of lightning launched from behind. But this is just another twisted angle, a reflection, a mirror. You're really in front of me, facing me, the facade of my injured head, broken by a game piece where we are both faceless, confronting each other. New Year's Day, 1991, Washington, D.C. I'm in my home watching the Fiesta Bowl, Tempe, Arizona. You're there with your camera, press credentials swinging around your neck. My throat keeps closing, filling with foreboding, despite the recent relief. You had gotten past that late December date, that forecast of arrival, Dad's ship that hadn't launched. I pick up the kitchen phone, call your pager. I had never done this before. You immediately call back. This is Larry Woodall. You paged me just now? My new number, unfamiliar. And your voice, unfamiliar. Interrupted by the stutter, reprise from last summer, how it had distressed you. The stutter hadn't lasted too long, went away one day without explanation, just as it had arrived on another. I didn't call you that summer, didn't want to upset you more, but now I had. 1990, that year had not been kind. Your condo's unsettled front door that the builder would not fix, so ajar. You bolted metal plates to the door and jamb, purchased a padlock just to claim some security. The photography job in Flagstaff, the editor took his time filling. You desperate to change jobs, change cities, leave the newspaper where she worked too. Your calendar noted the spring night she climbed on top of you, woke you from your dream of being a father, not one she shared, the summer abortion. And now only the flash of your life, near my heart, echo of the bullet you sent into your own. A couple days after your body was found, I listened to your answering machine. Mr. Woodall, when can we come to fix your front door? Good news, Larry, you got the job. Let's get you up to Flagstaff. Happy New Year.
Hi Larry, it's Leah. Just called to see how you're doing. I think I got cut off last night when I told you I loved you, so I wanted to make sure you heard that. Call me if you need to talk, okay? I do love you. Bye.
When I turned to leave, before the flash of your camera, before the shutter click, in that microsecond of perception, my face clouded, shifted with mild annoyance. Who takes a photograph in a hotel bathroom? The question rhetorical, I knew the answer. My twin brother does. You lowered your camera, cocked your head ever so lightly, slightly, ever so charmingly. Got it. All the promise that was you is here in this photo. All I would discover when you left. This picture of us both treat and torture, twins forever. If only in the illusion of mirror, the recording of an echo, your flash finally where it's meant to be, a guiding light that once had saved you, the darkened tile I had removed to play, the very place I will always find you. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Leah. That was such a stunning presentation to go with your work.
Thanks to my son. Yeah, thank you.
And then I also put the link to Leah's chapbook in the chat, so you can find that there as well. Our final reader tonight, last but certainly not least, Connie Zump lives and writes in Denver, Colorado, where she is a longtime member of Lighthouse Writers Workshop and a graduate of the Poetry Book Project. Her work has appeared in New Ohio Review, North American Review, Pilgrimage Magazine, The Christian Century, I-70 Review, and other publications. Educated as a developmental psychologist, her poems explore themes of impermanence, capacity to reach into and beyond the self we know. Encounters with compost heaps, tattoos, flecks of dust, and body sunbathers characterize the maze of experience described in her poems. Under This Sun is her first chapbook. Connie?
Thank you, Manuel. Leah, Erika, Martha, that was wonderful. I'm so happy to be part of this reading with all of you. And a huge shout out to Lighthouse for providing the place and the creative space in which to grow as a writer and to share our work. Tonight, I'm reading from my chapbook. Many of the poems came from my time in the Poetry Book Project. My chapbook is entitled Under This Sun. It was published in March. The poems in it are built around images and gestures that characterize a changing, aging self, cycles of shedding, what we think we are, cycles of loss, and then reaching for something that is difficult to articulate except through poetry. So the first poem I'll read is the first of the collection. It's a meditation on a compost heap. Emergence and rot. I see spring arrive with a pale ghost behind her. The tulips and flax flowers didn't survive the last acts of winter that came in May. Off with their heads. Into the compost with brown leaves from fall, eggshells from today, wither, decay, and maybe next season. The year he died, my father didn't make spring. He was gone before crocuses came up through the snow. This morning, his eyes and smile peered back at me from my own silent mirror. I never know where he'll pop up again. I see the persistence of salvia, lavender, thyme, fed by their own past lives. But under these buds tipped by sun, the business of diminishment has already begun. Honeysuckle spreads like creases and veins that twine my own skin. Kernel to flower to seed, promise to breaking apart, emergence to glorious rot, a rendering arc primal as mud on my hands, to rise up, then yield with equal grace to the churn and suck the dark conditions of the clay. I strip off my gloves, feel layers folded into the moldering muck. I see the dead leavings of each turn and turn, waiting for my time to turn, down on my knees, under this sun. The next two poems are a little different look at the notion of shedding. I leave myself. I used to curse the rapidy drill of construction down the road. Pollen coughed up in my own yard, ashes from far off hot disasters. I thought they buried me in dust. But now I know it's mostly me, shed on tables, mirrors, windowsills. I leave myself everywhere. affable dust. You see them when you stand at just the right angle to the light, scrapings and flakes we make as we collide and rub against each other. Our dust, like tiny moons in slow spin, an easy bafflement. We can't count how many we are, or if we are one, or whether it matters. Sometimes we don't know, in a tangle of sleep, my limbs from yours, or which of us is snoring. And the mites don't care whose past lives they eat. I'm fascinated by the body. This next poem is about a particularly striking work of art on someone's body. Three-eyed fox. The three-eyed fox brushes by as the waitress leans in, sets down my wine glass. It curls across her shoulder and clavicle, inked in swirls of green and blue. The strange sentinel stares out from just above her breast. She says the third eye is for her father, the wisest man she ever knew, and our lives converge at loss. I've watched the etch of my own father's life disappear, like his ashes on the Montana plain. Sometimes I strain to recall his face. She is 1/3 my age. Her artful skin, an uncreased canvas of mistakes not yet made. I envy her fox guide, its third eye, an extra line of sight set just above the dividing maze of this life. I envy that visible mark, the certain permanence burned above her heart. Some pools set aside a time for senior swim, and I'm never sure if I'm grateful or insulted. But this one is for my senior swim buddies, Dolores, Clara, and Rosalie. Tuesday Mermaids. It's Tuesday, and so slow, Van Morrison on the loudspeaker sings us in La-Ti-Da, a graying array of urban wildebeests, the lions single out, easy meat. We hunker over walkers, hobble in on canes, or stride on our own muscle and steam on the way to the umbrella-ringed cove, dragging our bags of afflictions behind us. We lower ourselves in, suited breasts break the surface, make wobbly ledges. Immersion takes us like a sacrament. Baptized, sleek, and young, we slip beyond our limits. Freestyle mermaids, lost in easy stroke beneath the glide. Now we are sylphs, the water, our air, flickering ripples edged with light. Like lilies plucked, our grace deflates when we emerge, gather our bones, and go. We hear the cool hum of autumn. We know, but today, water diamonds beaded to our skin. Ah, see how our August beauty breaks the heart of summer. This one's just a little more seasonally correct. November roses. The oaks out front are crackled brown. I see their scabbly arms. We raked bushels of acorns and leaves, said goodbye to summer blooms, gave everything a final pruning. And now I open the south side gate to an encore of roses. Scores of new blossoms show themselves in feisty pink against autumn's slow red and gold. But it's too late, too cold. It will snow tomorrow. Autumn bends away from us. There is no stopping things. Yet here they tremble, pink, in the face of a coming gray, reaching for a corner of thin November sun. I'm going to end with a poem about not writing poems. Last slant of light. Tonight, I sit in my den and pretend to write, idling phrases until the last slant of light streams silent from the room. Soon, shadows will creep into nooks. The moon will pale this space, my books, my pen, as words dissolve above a page as clean as dreamless sleep. I should go to bed, but I'm caught in that last thought that wove its way inside my head just before the sun dropped. And I know I could stay here, warmed through the night, in the radiance of the poetry I did not write. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Connie. And let's give a hand to all of our readers tonight. Let's see some claps in there, some virtual claps. Just as we close out this evening, any questions for our readers? And you can put those in the chat, or I believe you should be able to unmute yourself to ask a question.
Manuel, can we get the recording?
Yes, so good question. The recording will go live on the Lighthouse YouTube page Monday. And so you will be able to send that out, share with friends, family. Thanks for asking.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Any other questions?
Thanks again, Manuel.
Thank you, Connie. Martha, Erika,
Thank you.
Leah.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful opportunity. Miss you, Miss Lighthouse. So far away from Phoenix, but you're always in my heart.
It looks like we have one question in the chat from Kathy. It says, do you need to take a break from writing poetry?
Yes. Or at least you try. I tried turning to working on a memoir, and I just made it about 6 months, and I drifted back to poetry. So I don't know. It's just in my blood.
Sometimes breaks come unbidden when you can't find the muse and you don't want to be on a break. So.
I feel the same way. I don't really want to take a break because they come of their own volition. So I always say I'm writing, but I'm really taking a lot of breaks.
Yeah. I would just add that I mean, I don't consider myself a poet, but I'm really drawn to poetry at the moment with everything going on in the world. And I feel like that has just been percolating. But I also think that when we're not writing, we're musing and we're reading, and that's also a way into our writing world and the words on the page.
Absolutely. And we're studying other writers and other poets. And so during those unbidden breaks from poetry, that's what I know I and a lot of other writers are doing. We're engaged in deep study of other people's work.
So we have another question. Thank you all for answering that one. This one I think is specifically for Leah. How did the idea of the game with sliding tiles come to you?
So I often access, the kind of the difficult material that I'm obsessed about with my twin loss by an image or some kind of formalistic structure or form. And I just knew I stared at this photo for many, many years before I put a word down, and I was trying, it really became clear to me I needed to do something, again, as I'm learning at Lighthouse and other places about writing and what you can experiment with, all these different opportunities. I really felt like it needed to move in some way, to be animated in some way. And I tried some other forms. I tried making it into a cootie catcher, which I talk about in the essay. And I really wanted it to be an app that you got to play the photo and couldn't figure out how to do that and stuff. So it was quite a process. And I did focus on things that we did as children. So the slide puzzle was something that our mom, we would get, either you got in a Halloween bucket if you were lucky, or you got it for long drives, on family car trips and stuff like that. Many of us just cheated by taking the plastic prongs out and reorganizing it when you couldn't fix it. So it was a personal challenge. So yeah, it just was something that did eventually come to me. And then I thought about it for a long time more before I actually, sat down and wrote it, which took a while.
Thank you, Leah. Again, I just want to thank all of our readers as we close up tonight. Martha, Connie, Erika, Leah, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for just being such wonderful members of the Lighthouse community. And I think Leah said this as well, miss seeing you all in person. We're seeing you especially with the summer that we just had. Oh, and it looks like we have one more question. Leah, how did the act of finally finishing the book change your relationship to his death?
So I think that relationship is maybe always changing as I write more and explore different parts of our relationship and the family dynamic that we grew up in, and kind of a lack of language actually to talk about grief. So I'm always kind of looking for these things. And I'm exploring the different feelings, sadness, obviously, abandonment, some guilt, really, really trying to access some anger that just was not an emotion I was allowed to feel in my family. So again, that's where that form helps. Kind of each essay is a different kind of form that I've been working on. And I think the best thing very early on at Lighthouse that someone said to me in a workshop when I first started writing about Larry and twin loss, and read something in a workshop, and they said, "This is a love story." And I was like, that was the best, absolutely best remark I had early on to make me understand that is what it is. And it's not about, vomiting up a bunch of grief and or anger, all that kind of stuff. And so I just think I try to remember that all the time when I sit down to write.
Well, thank you, Leah. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Somebody messaged me during the event, and we will send out an email with links to where to buy the books, most likely on Monday as well as the link to the video of this. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we hope to see you all someday soon in person.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Leah.
everyone. Stay safe.
And
Absolutely.
be safe. Yes,
And thanks,
definitely.
everyone.
Thanks
Take care.
again.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.